This edition of Mac Voices is brought to you by Smile, the makers of the brand new PDF Pen 6, PDF Pen Pro 6, and PDF Pen for iPad and PDF Pen for iPhone. Find out more about all the flavors of PDF Pen at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, there's been a lot of discussion about privacy, and I tried to get an interview with the NSA, but no such luck. So I did the next best thing, and that is I called Joe Kissell, who is the author of the brand new Take Control of Your Online Privacy, and got him to talk to us a little bit about this pressing issue. Wait, is that...
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Is that you, Joe?
I can neither confirm nor deny that I may or may not be Joe Kissell.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think the beard may give it away, and the shirt is a definite giveaway, Joe. But other than that, I would hardly know you.
Good. And my master plan has succeeded. Now, before we start, Chuck, I want to warn you, people could be listening in on our conversation. In fact, people could be watching both of us right now. So be careful what you say.
Well, as long as it's the right people, Joe, the people that have subscribed to the show, I don't mind. But other than that...
Right. So I am wearing my privacy outfit today.
Well, it's pretty impressive, I must say.
Well, thank you. So these are the cheapest sunglasses money can buy. And I think that they really completely disguise my identity. I mean, I've been out shopping today. Not one person has asked me for my autograph. So I think it really is very effective at disguising my identity. And this is sort of what I think a lot of people do when it comes to online privacy. They take one step that solves one little piece of the problem, and then they think, hey, it's all private, nobody's going to know it's me, and they kind of forget about something else or a few other big things that might be giving them away. So this is my I really shouldn't try to do these interviews sober.
Yeah. This is a really interesting topic. I do feel like, though, we should tell the folks to make sure that nobody accuses you of anything. And I'm serious about this. This is not a book that was slapped together quick just to sort of take advantage of the online privacy and the NSA thing. This has been in the works for some time. I've known about it.
Little does the NSA know, I've been spying on them for years.
Well, that's
Wait,
comforting.
I shouldn't have said that.
Yeah, really, really. But no, this has been in the works for a while, so this is not something that is lightly researched or lightly considered.
No, not at all.
And that's an important point to make.
That's right.
Joe,
where shall we begin?
Well, I'm tempted to start asking you about privacy in general, then to ask you about the book, but let's try to roll them all into one. Or at least start with the book and then let that be our guide, maybe. What kind of things do you cover in this book? Because online privacy, man, that's a broad topic, or potentially broad topic.
It really is. And when I was in the brainstorming phase of the book, I had conversations with a lot of other people who are sort of professionals in security and privacy, and who know a lot more about it than I did. And we talked about a lot of, should we cover this? Should we cover this? Should we cover this? And it could easily have been 1,000 pages long. Don't worry, it's not 1,000 pages long. There's a lot to talk about. So what we decided to do was to, first of all, limit the scope in terms of talking about ordinary privacy for ordinary people. So this is sort of a recurring, refrain throughout the book is, I'm not going to tell you how to lock down everything on every device so that, no government agency or anybody could ever try, that's really not, very few people honestly need that sort of super heavy duty security, and it's incredibly inconvenient. and honestly, no matter what you do, it's not going to be absolutely bulletproof. So I decided, okay, first of all, we're going to restrict it by talking about the ordinary kinds of privacy that ordinary people need, not the super spy kind of stuff. And then I also decided to limit it in the way of not telling ordinary people how to do really, complicated technical things. I'm talking about the low-hanging fruit. So these are the sorts of things that will prevent casual hackers, and if you are concerned about advertisers, then advertisers, and certain other types of entities from getting the most sensitive sorts of information that you really don't want to reveal. But I also go out of my way in the book to say you probably don't really want complete online privacy. I mean, we got to do this, right? We have to communicate with other people. You probably want to buy stuff online. You want to send email. You want to interact with the web. I mean, there's a cost. You can't really have any human interaction at all without giving something away about yourself, but that's okay. So unless you want to go, live in a cave all alone without ever, encountering another human being, you have to sort of understand that privacy can't and shouldn't be complete, but it can be better.
This sounds strangely like the introduction to security. That you can only lock down so much before it becomes really inconvenient or borderline useless.
Absolutely, I have a whole sidebar in the book about the relationship amongst security, privacy, and anonymity, because a lot of people sort of conflate security and privacy. They're really not the same thing, but they are related to each other. So sometimes taking security measures can help to increase your privacy. Like, say if you lock your door, that will keep people out, but part of what it's doing by keeping people out is keeping people from seeing and hearing you inside. So you obtain privacy through security in some cases. But anyway, the place I sort of start with the book is to say, I'll bet some of my readers are of the, hey, I have nothing to hide mindset. And I admire people for having the belief that their life is an open book, and that they don't, I'm not committing any crimes, I'm not doing anything I should be ashamed of. That's great, good for you. But I think that all of us, even the most wholesome, upstanding people who would never think of doing anything wrong, still have things to hide, and that's totally fine. You might have to hide, Christmas and birthday presents from your family members. You might have to hide information about medical conditions from people that's none of their business. You might have to hide your credit card number from somebody who wants to steal it and buy stuff. I mean, even if you're not doing anything wrong, there are still people who would like to do stuff wrong with your personal information. So I kind of start out by saying, trying to disabuse readers of this notion that you have nothing to hide, and saying, it's not that you're doing anything wrong, but even if you're a totally great, perfect person, it's okay to hide things. And then I talk about who are you actually hiding stuff from. And there's, a whole long list. And some of these entities you really do want to hide your stuff from, and some of them you don't really care. So if I open the weather app on my iPhone, I really want that app to know where I am, so it's giving me the weather for the correct location. And I like that to change automatically depending on where I am. So I don't like hiding my location from my weather app. On the other hand, I don't want for some strange stalker on the internet to know where my kid is all the time. So it's very, very context sensitive what sorts of information you are hiding from whom in what situation. So, I sort of lay out that whole story, and then after I do that, I get into the specifics of, okay, so what do you do about your Wi-Fi connection? What are the risks? How do you secure that? What about email? What about web browsing, online shopping, file sharing, social media, and the whole long list. So it's different from really all of my other Take Control books in that the whole book contains zero numbered lists of steps. There's not like install this software and you click this button and do this. That isn't in the book. It's like you can read this in bed. It's just you're understanding things. Now I do make recommendations, stuff you should try generally, but it's not very specific because I want this to apply to any device, any platform, any version, and if I tried to get into really, really specific exact directions, it would go out of date instantly. But I think there's enough information there and enough links to where you can find more that you can say, okay, well, I've decided that I need to use whatever it is, SSL for email or something. I have at least enough information to figure out how to go about doing that.
Joe, I'd love to go through each one of the categories you mentioned, but we're not going to do that. But one that it seems right now, and in fact, I just was on an episode of the Mac Roundtable, and they really geeked out as far as the hows and the whats about getting certificates and running your own mail server and all these things. And at the end of the day, that's great for geeks. I mean, part of the fun for the geeks is just setting the stuff up and making it work. But for a lot of us, we just want something that works, that is fairly secure, that kind of keeps the bad guys, and with a very broad definition of bad guys, out.
Yes.
Maybe...
Well, you bring up something interesting, though, and this is something that comes up a few different ways in my book. You talk about somebody running their own mail server. I used to run my own mail server. In fact, I've run a few different mail servers, and I don't now. A person I know who is involved in the take control world told me that at one point he was, I don't remember if it was stopped at the border crossing like between US and Canada, or it was like a no-fly list or something. But anyway, he got stopped coming into the country. And when he asked why this was, the response was, well, because you run your own mail server.
Really?
This is a reputable person. That's all I'll say. So now I have run my own mail server. That's never happened to me. But the point I'm trying to make is one of the things that has come out recently with this whole NSA thing is if you encrypt your email, that makes you more interesting to the NSA. New rules take effect that, if it's encrypted, then we can keep this person's communication for longer than if it isn't encrypted. And if you use Tor, which is a sort of anonymous web browsing system, just the fact that you use this, regardless of what you do with it, draws scrutiny to you. So a lot of the things that seem like, if I did this, and this, that would really protect my privacy. It might, but it also might backfire in the sense of making it look like you have something to hide if you really don't. So for every one of these things, you have to kind of balance, I could install my own mail server, but would that actually, cause problems instead of solving them?
Wow, that's really interesting. And I don't think a lot of folks have thought about it that way. That you just invite scrutiny by trying to increase some of these things instead of saying, go ahead and look at it. There's nothing there. Huh.
Right.
That's interesting. Well, what steps can we take again for the very broad definition of bad guys to keep them out of our email, or keep them at least being able to access what we don't want them to access?
Yeah, well, one of the first things I do after sort of, scaring people with these are all the things you have to worry about is say, okay, you want to protect yourself against the casual hackers and the script kiddies and the people who are just, sort of poking around for easy marks. So the suggestions I give in that section, most of them are pretty, things you've already heard from me before. Make sure you use SSL everywhere for things like email and Facebook and Drop, like any sort of cloud-based thing that you connect to, whether it's with an email client or Gmail website or wherever it may be. If it's a website, make sure it's an HTTPS website with a little lock there. If it's email, make sure you have the use SSL box checked for both incoming and outgoing mail. This is a really easy thing to do. It protects a certain portion of your data for a certain portion of its journey along the internet, but it happens to be one of the most vulnerable stretches. So that's a really good thing to do. I'd also talk about Wi-Fi a lot. So most of us use Wi-Fi to connect to the internet, and if you run your own, you have your own router, airport base station, or time capsule, or some other router, make sure you use WPA. Don't use WEP. Use a great password. Make sure that not only your wireless password, but also your administrator password is great. Now, I've run into cases where, like, oh yeah, the wireless password is super strong, but the administrator password is admin. So, you can still break into the box and then change the settings. So you got to be careful about those sorts of things. And then if you are someplace else where the network is open, or you don't trust it, or you don't have any control over it, use a VPN, which encrypts all of your traffic between your iPhone or Mac or whatever, between that device and some server out on the internet. So there's a whole list of things like that where they're really easy to do. You check a few boxes, or you install some software, or they're very minor things, but once you've done them, you've sort of patched the most egregious problems. And then there are some things that require more effort and sort of case-by-case decisions. And even, email message by email message decisions in some cases. So it could be that I really don't care about encrypting anything I ever send to you, but now a thing comes up and now I need to communicate with my accountant. And that's a different kind of a thing. And so I say, well, for this person, for this project or whatever, we're going to use a different way to communicate. So there's some things that are just quick fixes, and some things that you really need to give a little more thought to.
Joe, since we've talked about it so much before, I know you use it, I know I use it. What are your feelings on Gmail? Candidly,
less fun than they used to be.
Oh,
there was in the development of this book, we had a big long discussion amongst a number of different people about sort of, can you trust Google, or how much can you trust Google, or is Google evil? Can Google be evil? Are they less evil than other options? And it's really tough because on the one hand, probably no company on earth tries harder to track your information than Google does. And they do it because that's what enables them to display targeted ads, and targeted ads are like the massive proportion of Google's income. So Google works very, very hard to know who you are, what you are searching for, what websites you are going to, where you live, like everything about you. Now, Google seems to take pretty good, care of your data. In fact, they really want to make sure it doesn't fall into anybody else's hands, because they want to own it all. That would be a competitive disadvantage for them. But it is also kind of creepy, and it's a black box. You can figure out what kind of information Google knows about you, but you really don't know what they're going to do with it or how secure it is once it's there. So. So just sort of not knowing what could happen is an element that gives me pause about Gmail and all of Google's other stuff. Their responses to these NSA and other sort of government spying allegations hasn't really given me a warm, fuzzy feeling, and I have really every reason to believe that if the government wanted to read any of my email, they could. I really don't. I would never assume that anything in Gmail is safe from law enforcement or something. But apart from the privacy issues, I've been less and less happy with Gmail for some other reasons that sort of, we don't really even need to discuss them now, but let's say performance reasons. And I've been thinking more and more, maybe I ought to look into another provider. Gmail's free, which is great. And it's, kind of compatible with everything, which is great. And, spam filtering is really, really good. But I am getting to the point where I think, well, maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to pay, $50 a year or something. for something that would be a little more private and a little more robust.
Okay, that's a conversation we'll come back to at another time, because
Yes.
I'll be very interested in that. But isn't the $50 per year provider, I mean, don't they have the same kind of issues with regard to law enforcement, with regard to the ability to access your mail? And admittedly, it's not going to be quite as powerful as Google, not with maybe some of the automatic scanning, but I guess I'm trying to see the difference, and maybe
Okay,
you've already found it.
Fair enough. First thing is we know that there are paths from Google to the government, whether directly or indirectly. Google is such a huge target, and obviously it's not the only company. There are a bunch of other large companies that also have just bazillions of subscribers. Smaller companies are less worth the government's time to have blanket monitoring on. So even though they might say, yes, we need here's a court order or a subpoena for so-and-so's data, it is less likely with a smaller provider that there will be blanket surveillance. So that's sort of point one. Point two is there exist email providers outside the United States. Now, they might have their own issues of whatever kind, but one thing they won't have is the US government will not have any power to compel them to do anything. So there is that. I have looked at email providers in Canada. I've looked at email providers in Switzerland and other places. Now, I haven't ultimately decided if any of this is worth the effort or the bother. It might not be. I'm just saying they exist. And if you decide that this is a particular worry of yours, use Google. Google will remember that you're searching for these things, of course, and they'll tell the government. But still, go find it. Lots of email providers exist. Now, there have been these stories lately about these really high security email providers that have shut down because it was sort of either that or reveal private data about our customers to the government. So there is also that risk too, that if you choose some like hyper encrypted, super anonymous provider and they are in the United States, that could happen. The flip side of this is that if you choose an email provider that's not in the United States, now all your email is foreign traffic, so that might be fair game for the NSA. So it's really not a game you can win, but it is useful to be aware of and think about all these different pieces and decide, okay, for what I care about and the people I talk to and the topics I talk about, this is probably the right combination of things for me.
This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Smile, the makers of great utilities like Text Expander, Text Expander Touch, PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPhone, PDF Pen for iPad, and Disk Label. Let's talk about the iOS version of Text Expander, Text Expander Touch. Because iOS is so effectively sandboxed and restrictive, it is impossible for Text Expander to do what it does the same way it does it on the Mac. So the geniuses at Smile took a different approach. Build an API and let other developers add Text Expander Touch capabilities to their own apps. The problem with that approach is that other developers had to buy in. And that's where this turns into an amazing testimonial about the power of Text Expander. More and more apps are supporting Text Expander Touch on the iPhone and iPad. Amazing apps like Day One, the great journaling app. Drafts, a fantastic way to capture notes and ideas. Elements, the markdown powerhouse. IA Writer, the professional writing tool. PDF Pen for iPhone and PDF Pen for iPad. Now there's a surprise. Simple Note, one of my personal favorites. Write Room, the distraction-free writing environment. Daylight Touch, the business productivity manager. OmniFocus for iPad and OmniFocus for iPhone. Task management at its best. Things for iPhone and Things for iPad. More task management. The list goes on and on and on. Over 150 apps and counting. The odds are that you already have a favorite productivity app that supports Text Expander Touch, so what are you waiting for? Get Text Expander Touch now in the iTunes Store and start using all your favorite Text Expander snippets right away, because Text Expander Touch can sync with your Mac through Dropbox. Find out just how powerful your apps can be when they are Text Expander enhanced. Text Expander Touch from Smile. Learn more at smilesoftware.com and get Text Expander Touch in the iTunes App Store. Thanks to Smile for being the longest running sponsor of MacVoices. So the safest way for me to get a message to you is for me to put my sunglasses on, leave my cell phone at home, print it on a piece of paper, and drive it to you.
Traffic cams. They will see you the whole way.
Shoot. So I have to set up card drops along the way. Is that it?
Owls work pretty well. It would have to be a pretty long-range owl. It would take a while. So that's one idea. Basically, whether you're using like messages or Skype or whatever kind of email or AIM, any kind of messaging system at all, there's really not a guarantee of complete end-to-end privacy. Now, the providers may say, we guarantee complete end-to-end privacy, but you don't know, because they could be compelled by a secret court order that includes a "you must never tell anybody about this" clause. We know this stuff happens, right? So the fact that they deny any backdoors or secret whatever doesn't mean they don't exist. Now, having said that, there is anecdotal evidence to believe that the iMessage protocol that Messages uses is pretty secure, more secure than most. There are ways that you can send encrypted email back and forth, and that's not too hard to do. But even there, I talk about the fact that, okay, whether you're browsing a website and you're using SSL and a VPN and all this kind of stuff, so like totally secure end to end, or you got email and I've encrypted this message and I know that it's encrypted before it leaves my computer and all the way across the nation to you, and you decrypt it. That's great. But that's not the end of it, because I don't know what's going to happen to that message once it's on your device. Will you, crumple it up and set it on fire? I mean, or it's going to hang around on your computer, and you're going to back up your computer. You might back it up to the cloud. Will you back it up securely? What if somebody steals your there's this whole long list of things that could still happen to either you or to me, regardless of the fact that the message stayed encrypted all the way, in transit between the two of us. So one of the suggestions I make in the book is that if you have something really, really sensitive to talk about, email is really not a good way. Video and audio are a bit better in the sense that because video and audio use so much bandwidth, it's more difficult, more cumbersome to store and analyze all that data. Storing and analyzing text is super easy. Analyzing video and audio is harder. It can totally be done. I mean, don't get me wrong. For all I know, this conversation is being transcribed by a machine in real time, and the video is being stored someplace. I'm just saying it's harder, and so it's likely that would only be done if the attacker, whoever that may be, has a specific reason to watch you. And if they don't have a specific reason to watch you, then certainly video or audio would be, a notch or two safer than email.
Okay. So we don't just keep beating on the whole email thing. Two other areas I want to just touch on before we go. The first one, social networks in general, Facebook in particular, because Facebook still is the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and it seems to be the one that, I'm not going to say it has the least regard for privacy. It just has its own notions of privacy, and they seem to be, at least from where I sit, kind of self-serving notions of privacy.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I have a chapter on social networking, and I basically say, you noticed that word social, didn't you? So social is, it's almost the same thing as public. I mean, what most social networks say is, well, no, it's not public, it's between you and your friends. But the way a lot of people use social networks is they try to accumulate as many friends or whatever, followers, whatever the case may be, as possible. And of course, once something gets out, it only takes one non-trustworthy person in your circle to know about some piece of information you didn't want them to know about, and then you're all done. So saying, well, yes, of course I use Facebook, but I only have 50 friends, and they're all close family members or whatever. Like, okay, that's great. Are all of them as keenly tuned in to privacy concerns as you are? Do you absolutely trust all of them with any personal data that you may share? I don't know. So what I say about social networking is, yes, of course, read the privacy policies. You should do that. Go look at each site's privacy controls and see what your options are. You may be able to keep certain things out of certain people's hands, but pretty much you should assume that social is social, and whatever information you share on social networks, it is effectively public. And it really, there's the old saying, what happens on the internet stays on the internet, and it does. It stays there forever. So I say, if you have something to say about yourself that's personal, you will have to assume that 10 years from now, when you're applying for a job or running for political office or trying to get into a university or dating or whatever it is, trying to get a loan or life insurance, that company or institution or person will absolutely Google you. That person will absolutely search for you on Facebook, will absolutely try to find out everything they can, because, I would, right? If I'm hiring somebody,
sure, or,
of course I'd want to know as much about them as I can. And there are lots of stories about jobs that have been lost or, not obtained because of something somebody found on Twitter or Facebook or wherever. So I just say, if you aren't sure that you're okay with this information being out there, really don't put it in these places at all.
It seems obvious, but
it does seem obvious. But the week I was writing this particular chapter of the book, this was when the Anthony Weiner sexting scandal broke. It was right after there was that train derailment in Spain, right after the engineer had posted on Facebook bragging about how fast he can get the train to go. And there were like all these other things that are happening where, people who should be smart were just posting crazy, stupid, incriminating information about themselves online. And I'm like, so what I say in the book is that the very best thing to do, I'm telling you this as your friend, is don't do stupid things. Really, just avoid doing the stupid things. That's, better for all of us. But if you're going to do stupid things anyway, then at least don't publicize them, and basically anything that travels across a network you ought to assume is public. And more so if you are a public figure, if you are a politician, a celebrity, author, well, I don't know. But anyway, if you are somehow a public figure, then you are likely to be more of a target, and more people are going to be interested in, hacking into your account or whatever. And people have more to gain by exposing you. So just be really, really careful with what you put online ever.
Yeah, and again, that seems to be very reasonable advice. But I guess we all make mistakes, at times, and that's just the nature of being human. But some of the stuff, you're right. And there's the old story, as I recall, about, I think it was somebody in the CIA or the FBI, talked about Facebook and said, "Gee, this is great, because all these years we've been trying to get information on you people, and now you're just giving it to us.
Right.
You're just putting it out there for anybody to see."
That's right. And almost everybody does it, and that's probably the biggest thing that I'm hoping to accomplish with this book, is to make people aware of how much they are giving away about themselves. And there are people for whom they're perfectly happy to do that. That it's really not a problem. And if you're one of those people, more power to you. I just want you to know. I want you to be aware of who can find out what about you, and to just, think through the possible consequences.
Yeah. So if I guess if anybody with the name J. Edgar Hoover tries to friend you on Facebook, probably not a good idea.
Well, that's there. One of the things I discovered in writing this book is there are, as I've been talking about, there are two sides to everything. More security, but also more scrutiny. I say, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. So yes, you can be my friend, and I'll be watching you too.
Oh, jeez. Joe, this is one I bet is not covered in the book, and I'm very serious about that.
Okay.
But it's this. Whoops, it's this. Okay.
All right.
Should I be worried about my webcam, or is this something for the tinfoil hat crowd?
I know that there exists a hack for Android devices that can remotely turn on your camera. It's a hack for Android. There's commercial off-the-shelf software you can buy for Macs and probably most other devices that does this too. And some of it is like, okay, if my computer is stolen, I want to be able to remotely turn on my webcam and take pictures of the person who stole it, right? So this is intentional. It's a feature. But it is absolutely possible that some malware or Trojan horse, whatever, could turn on your computer's camera remotely. Now, all the cameras that I have here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that could actually see me right now, all of these cameras have little lights on them. So at least if and that's a hardwired thing. You can't turn on the camera without also turning on the little green light, or blue. Of course, if I'm looking over here, I'm not going to notice that this green light has come on. So that's a security feature to protect you against that sort of thing happening. It's nice and it's good, but it's not absolute. The most you can hope for is that if somebody hacks into your camera and turns it on, at least you'll see the light go on and you'll realize someone's watching you. I don't know if you remember the very first iSight camera. I have one, but it's in a closet over there. The little sort of tube-shaped thing that you would, it had a thing on the front that you twist it, and there was like an iris closed, and it would not just turn off the electronics, but actually physically cover the lens. And I thought that was great. Cameras don't, built-in cameras on computers and most webcams don't have those anymore. So you're right, I don't talk about that in the book. That was sort of outside the scope, but although I don't think it's something that most people need to actively worry about. And like here, there's really, none of my cameras could see anything interesting ever. You can see my books and you can see, my messy desk. But if things happen within the view of your camera that you might not like it to see, then the little black cloth might not be a bad idea.
And we had the same question, though, over the mics, too. Because if you turn on the camera, you turn on the mic.
That's true. And of course, you can turn on a microphone without having any light go on. And if there were some sort of malware, it wouldn't necessarily be obvious at all that someone were listening in. Now, again, the conversations I have in this room are incredibly boring to anyone who is not me, and hopefully the person on the other end. But if you are dealing in government secrets, or trying to protect your sources as a journalist, or you have a secret lover on the side, or whatever, that wouldn't be a bad idea to take further measures with those microphones too.
And I guess we need to say here at the end of the day, let's not be paranoid. Let's just recognize that these are possibilities. These are issues of the technological age. And if you're watching this show, then it means that you're probably into technology in some way, and therefore these issues apply to you.
Yeah, you really shouldn't be paranoid. And one of the things, I don't know if this is cold comfort, but we're all in the same boat. If hackers or the government or whoever it is has more or less unlimited access to the information that travels over the internet, then we are all equally vulnerable. And so, practically speaking, you're only likely to get in trouble if you do end up doing something particularly shameful. Not that mistakes don't happen. Of course, mistakes happen. Of course, people have been wrongly accused of something. They see, some computer sees a bunch of keywords and, this person must be a terrorist or something, and it turned out to be completely, innocuous. Of course that does happen, but it happens very rarely, and I think the fact that we are all in the same boat, and that includes lawmakers, and that includes the 800,000 employees of the NSA. We are all in the same boat. I'm not too terribly worried.
No, that's good. That's good. So, as we always do at this point, the specifics of the book, how much, and it's available now.
That's classified.
That's classified.
Yeah,
it's going to make it tough to sell the book, Joe.
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. So yeah, it's a $10 book, and as I said, this is a platform agnostic, version agnostic book. This is for anybody using any kind of device, even set-top devices. It isn't super technical. It's something you can just sit down and read. TakeControlBooks.com, $10. And I think we're doing some sort of a bundle with my passwords book, although I haven't checked on that recently, so I'm not positive about that. But anyway, you should of course also have the passwords book, because a good password can go a long way to protecting your privacy too. But it's I've written a lot of Take Control books, and this is one of my favorites. I really, really enjoyed writing this. There were some parts of the book that raised eyebrows among the people who did the tech review. That might be a little bit controversial, or might maybe go, but that's okay. I'm telling it like I see it as best I can.
Like you always do. At the very least, if you get the book, it'll make you think. Hopefully. You don't have to change your behavior if you're satisfied with it, but it'll make you aware of things that you really should be aware of.
And best of all, when you buy the book, we get your mailing address and phone number, and it... Wait a minute.
I
will use my power only for good.
Yes, I don't doubt it for a second. With a shirt like that, who could doubt it? Joe, thank you. It's been enlightening and interesting, and I'm going to look forward to digging through the book myself, just to find out what I'm doing wrong, because I'm sure I am.
I hope you enjoy it.
I definitely will. Folks, I think it's Joe Kissell. We're not sure. He's the author of the new Take Control of Your Online Privacy from Take Control eBooks. Please check it out for your own good. Joe, we'll see you again next time.
All right.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices, the talk of the Mac community. I've got a couple calls to make, so we'll see you next time. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, Facebook, and for more Apple, Mac, and tech-related shows, including Mac Voices, Mac Notables, the Mac Jury, and the Mac Voices Briefing. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com.